Hi guys, I'm Katie Kiersey and I run marketing here at Right Side Up. For those of you who aren't familiar with Right Side Up, we're a collective of marketing specialists who have helped more than 600 companies hit their growth goals. We have expertise across all marketing channels, including performance, lifecycle, SEO, social, analytics, and creative, to name just a few. But today we're going to be digging into what it takes to plan, launch, and scale a paid media strategy at an early stage B2C company. From prereqs for launching to a channel overview and finally to tips for measuring performance, we have a lot to cover in this session and I'm really excited about it. And for that, it's a pleasure to introduce you guys to today's speaker, Lissa Rigetz. Lissa has been on our project strategy team for nearly 2 years now, and she's driven by a desire to help founders and marketing teams unlock new opportunities, grow their teams and businesses, and achieve new growth both personally and professionally. She's helped more than 100 companies grow their businesses over the last 13 years, including LG, Unilever, Dove, Degree, Tresemme, Hellmann's, Murad, Cote, Ebby by Sofia Vergara, and Corky, to name just a handful of them. And she's got really a ton of great learnings and insights to share with you today. But before I turn it over to Lissa, I just wanted to cover off on a couple of quick logistics. First, please submit your questions throughout the session using Zoom's Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. We're bookmarking about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. And then second, I'm recording this session and I'll be sharing the recording as well as Lissa's slides with you via email in the coming days. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lissa.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining us for today's webinar. I hope this information is insightful and helpful. And I'm eager to hear all of your questions and thoughts towards the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's dig right in. Today, we're going to be talking about how to plan, start, and scale paid media strategies for early stage startups or companies. We're going to be covering a variety of topics, anything from, am I ready to jump in and start investing in ads? If so, where do I start? How should I test? How do I know if it's working or not working? And how might I consider scaling it? There are tons of reasons why everyone's saying, hey, you should buy ads. Anything from placing your brand products and services in front of a significant number of your ideal customers pretty much right away, to testing all sorts of different types of value propositions and offers to see what works and doesn't. You can make progress towards specific goals throughout your sales funnel, and you can tap into all sorts of really cool algorithmic bidding and targeting types and tools through these ad platforms that are really intriguing. And when you unlock what works, you can scale your business relatively quickly. It all sounds good, but if you aren't set up for success day one, then you can waste a lot of time and money. So let's dig into some of the things what you should be thinking about in a perfect world before you get started in paid programs. I have a really big belief system around paid programs should truly amplify existing growth, not create it from scratch. So ideally, you want to be in a place where you're ready to invest. You have some runway, you have cash on hand, you know what goal you're after, and you can think thoughtfully and realistically about how much time you have and money you have to invest to get to that goal within your runway. You also want to be able to present what you're offering. So understanding your key audience persona or audience or segments, you know what to offer them, how to offer it to them, at least to a basic sense. You have a path to conversion. So you've built out a user journey or maybe a sales funnel with organic traffic and early customers. These are not just your friends and family who are going to drive up that conversion rate and make it look really fantastic. These are everyday people or people within your audience segment who have gone through and experienced your offering. It doesn't have to be fully optimized, but you should have some baseline data to know roughly like what you should expect if you turn on some paid channels. You also want to be ready for a higher volume of traffic and customers. This is anything from technology. If you start driving a ton of people to your site tomorrow, is your site going to break? Is it going to be able to handle it? Do you have process in place? If something breaks, how fast can you get it back up? Do you have a team in the CX department? Are you the person that handles CX? Do you have someone in organic social? Have you given them a heads up that there may be more inbound, more comments on posts and things like that? So you want to just be ready for it when it comes, so that you're not caught off guard. And probably biggest is you want to have an open mindset, and you want to be willing to experiment and know that just because you're ready to invest in ads does not mean that tomorrow all of a sudden your business is going to go from 0 to 1 million. You have to build some hypotheses that you want to prove out. You want to kind of think about, what can I test? What can I learn? Don't get discouraged if it's not working right off the bat. There's a lot of different things that you can do to optimize and improve. And you also want to make sure that you are willing to dedicate the time and the expertise, whether it's you or a person on your team or someone you hire, to help you manage and optimize your program. So today we're going to cover all 8 of these, and I'll move as quick as possible so we can get it all done. But we're going to start with how to set some goals, defining your audience. We're going to talk about messaging and offers, channels and partners, how you can approach planning for your budgets and forecasting results, measurement, how you might optimize, and a couple notes on how to scale and diversify. First of all, we want to talk about what your North Star is. What are you hoping to to drive with your ad campaign? Are you wanting to build awareness and trust? Do you have credibility in the marketplace? Are you wanting to generate conversion or consideration or project education? Like, do people need to know more about your product before they're able or interested or willing to invest in it? Like the longer sales cycles and those types of products. Do you want to drive purchase? Are you wanting to drive revenue? I'm sure the answer is always yes. Which objections might you need to overcome to get your customer to take the action? Or are you really, you've driven some customers, they have churned some of them, you want to go back and win them back, or you want to build deeper relationships with the customers that you have. Any of these could be potential paths to invest in ads to support, but you really want to choose one as you go through this whole process and think about how you build towards that one thing. For the purposes of today's conversation, we're probably going to talk most about conversion or action and purchase type of objectives or goals. You definitely want to spend a lot of time early on understanding who your audience is. You can do this through a variety of things like researching, looking at Google, looking at your competitive kind of set, doing customer interviews, doing some, just general research, sending surveys, talking to your sales teams or your sex teams, looking at your site analytics, digging into attributes that some of these cool ESP tools are providing around your CRM database. Try to understand everything you possibly can about them. What makes them tick? What platforms do they use? What's their interests and their behaviors? What is their pain and their pleasure points? What kind of brands do they like to buy from? And which of those brands are similar to yours? And, at the end of the day, like, what and why should they invest in your product or service? So try to understand as much as possible as you can about your audience. It's really going to define how you make choices moving forward. Once you understand who your audience is, you want to start coming up with some initial messaging and offers. So you want to think about where in the funnel, within your sales funnel, your prospective customer is at the moment they experience your ad. What are they looking for? What kind of problems are they facing at that time? What really could interest them in taking action today in this moment when they see this ad? Some of those things you can dig a little further into is pain or pleasure. This can be in how you position language. It could also mean the hook that you're building your entire messaging strategy off of. So as you look into, what are those pain and pleasure points, you can consider, going either direction or try both and see what happens. And so, for example, if you're selling an over-the-counter headache medicine, if you position around pain, you might say fast-acting headache relief when you need it most. If you're positioning around pleasure, maybe you're focusing in on you're experiencing your most productive day every day because you don't have a headache. It's a simple example, but you can kind of play around with essentially selling the same USP, unique selling point, in 2 completely different ways. Objection busting, this is really critical if you're trying to drive conversion and you see people go through this purchase funnel, and some people complete the purchase and some people don't. This is going directly after people who do not make the purchase. Why aren't they buying? Are they buying because they think the price is not right or it's too high? Do they not feel like there's value there? Do you maybe have an issue with trust or credibility because you're brand new and they don't know who you are? You're in a competitive space and there's a lot of alternatives, and you need to help that switching cost be lower. Or is it just an effectiveness thing? Like you're making claims against your product if, let's say, your skincare and like, it's supposed to remove the, the anti-aging wrinkles on your face, and does it really work? So try to figure out what that is. You can do that through surveying different customers who are dropping off. You can, ask even like, how did you hear about us surveys with additional questions post-purchase, like why did you buy? Why did you feel certain ways? You can survey people over email as well, but you want to try to, figure that out and then introduce different messaging across that funnel, whether it's on-site or in the ads. Overall copy tips, just try to be relatable. You're talking to humans, talking to your customers, be on brand, try to use stories to compel, an action. Consider addressing your audience with you or your. Keep in mind that you want to try to keep it pretty concise. So highlight one core benefit, not every single benefit possible. I know we see a lot of these really long organic posts these days, but in the ad world, you want to try to keep it very simple and short, because you want them to see the ad, take action, go off site, and complete the purchase. So you don't want to have them spend too much time on that ad. The only they say exceptions to that would be if you're putting a video out there, you want someone to watch more of the video because they need to understand more about the product or educate them in some way, shape, or form. That might be a little bit different. For the most part, keep it concise. And test and iterate. Don't keep your copy static forever. Try different things. See what works. You also want to consider crafting different offers. And there's kind of two types. There's evergreen and there's limited time offers. Evergreen is always on. It's something like get 10% off your first purchase, and you offer it to every single new customer that comes in the door. It can run for a very long time. I've seen companies run their evergreen offers for 2 years. Not that that's recommended, but I've seen it happen. And limited time offers are, things like Cyber Monday. You get this bundle today, 50% off, and tomorrow you can never, get this offer again. Creating urgency is really important to try to get people to take action on the offer right now and not bookmark it and come back to it later. Social proof can be super powerful, whether it's customer testimonials, influencer unboxings, press stamps, or quotes. You can try to overcome objections. And in the examples where there might be subscription brands out there, you also might consider adding guarantees, like cancel anytime, to your ad copy, just to know people are like, hey, there's a little barrier to entry here. Like, it's okay. If I don't like it, I can always change my mind later. And include a clear call to action. You always need a CTA, whether it's an end card, whether it's a button, whether it's just copy or somebody saying it to the screen. Try to make the offer super easy to redeem. Don't make it hard for them. It may stop them from purchasing, give them a bad taste in their mouth, and find ways to track them. There are lots of different things to consider there. And really probably a super important thing, especially for the free trials or the semi-free trial type offers that are out there, you want to monitor the quality of the customers. Just because the CAC is lower, and we'll talk about CAC later, the cost to acquire, does not necessarily mean that that customer is a valuable customer for you. So we'll talk about kind of like longevity and lifetime value and that kind of thing. You also want to consider the entire customer journey from the ad through the purchase. So your ad copy should be relevant to the landing page you're driving the traffic to. I know that sounds basic, but you believe it or not, I see a lot of companies that don't really think about that. They'll drive their traffic to the homepage and other things like that. So you want to really test that entire purchase journey before turning on the ads. What is the ad copy? What landing page did they go to? Is it easy to buy the product that you're featuring? And is it easy to purchase all the way through? When you're testing, test with a customer mindset and try on different devices, mobile, don't forget Android and Apple, tablet and desktop, and also make sure that you're getting all your post-purchase or abandonment experiences that are often powered by your ESPs, whether it's Klaviyo, a Braze, an Interval, or some other service. The landing page journey by itself is its own fun bucket of optimization opportunities. Just some tips here on the right. If you want to play with different types of like higher converting components to landing pages, consider putting the activation offer all the way on top. Keep that focus hero message pretty singular in nature. Add press, reviews, or credibility. Those stamps do make a difference. Make sure the product benefits and USPs are clear, no more than 5 on one page. and make sure that you can purchase the product that you are featuring in the ad on that page, and don't make it all the way at the bottom. Should be one simple scroll from the top at most. Consider adding something maybe about your brand in case you're newer and people don't know you, and potentially offer an email capture. And so those are just a couple of the things that you might consider in there. And don't forget to test the different landing pages that you're running to ads to. There's, a lot there as well you can play with. Some other creative best practices. So, kind of think about creating native vibes and align everything to your core objective. So we talked about earlier, if you're trying to drive conversion, make sure that the product is clear and visually in the marketing. If you're selling deodorant, make sure that the deodorant is in the picture and you can read the letters on it. Just think about Campbell's tomato soup back in the day. You would see a TV ad about Campbell's tomato soup and you knew exactly which one it was on the shelf when you went to the store. Virtual stores aren't that different. You want to make sure that people know what product it is and they know they can recognize it on the shelf, virtual shelf, when they see it. You want to make sure that all your ads are authentic to your brand, tone, and voice, and try to keep that as consistent as possible. Lots of ways to test different copy, but it can still be on brand. You want to test as many types of formats to tell your story, whether it's static images, GIFs, videos, reels, stories, etc. We talked a lot about messaging. Be conscious of trends, and it can be a way to stay relevant and keep people interested. And you also want to think about, once you have your creative in play, making sure that creative is native to the platform you're advertising on. So you may need to make slight tweaks for search or social, things like that. So just keep that in mind. I've included a ton of ad examples in the appendix of this presentation. You can also go to Facebook's free ad library. TikTok just rolled one out of their own. I think it was like a couple days ago or something, but it's only available in Europe. So depending on how good you are at VPNs, maybe you can check that out too. But some of the common ad creative concepts that may be worth testing. I love customer UGC and influencer reviews. They add credibility. They're engaging, especially if you pick the right types of partners there. It can be really cool. Mashups. This is taking maybe a boring video or series of videos or testimonials and just putting them together and making it really engaging. Product benefits, demos, us versus them. You can even feature your brand, your founder, problem solution, promotional, things like that. A word on promotional assets. Typically, I like to have the entire ad speak to the promotion. So it's, there's not the always on type of ones, but typically like the short-term urgency ones. I also like to kind of use this general recipe for developing direct response style video ads. There's really 4 components. There's a hook, it's a product introduction, it's a belief, and a CTA. The hook is super, super important, if not the most important thing when you're developing response style video ads. The hook is the first 2 to 3 seconds of a video ad. This you can literally cut out of any video and test a bunch of different versions. You can take one core asset, develop 10 different hooks, and you have 10 different pieces of content to test around, which is great, especially in a low budget. So you want to use this hook to capture attention. It could be a quick cut. It could be someone saying something into the screen. It could be some crazy offer. It could be a lot of different things. The product, you want to introduce your product as quickly as possible within the video to make sure they know what you're offering and what you're promoting. The belief is like, why should I buy this product? And the CTA is what the offer is and what should I do? How should I buy it? Tell me what I need to do. Next comes channel and partner priorities. You want to think about how your prospects or customers are spending their time. Are they already searching for a solution like yours? If so, maybe consider paid search. If they don't know about your product, or they don't have that, they have a problem, but they aren't necessarily searching for a solution, if they aren't aware that a solution exists, then you may consider discovery channels like paid social. If you need to build credibility or trust, then you can consider endorsement marketing as your early channels. This could be paying influencers, working with affiliates, hiring a press partner, going after other partnerships, and maybe listing on review sites. Things to think about. So just because a lot of companies start with paid search and paid social, which I will spend a lot more time on in this presentation, it does not mean that you need to. Another example is, for instance, CBD. We get a lot of CBD clients through, and they have a lot of challenges to be able to go into paid search and social traditionally. So they might start with something like affiliate. So just keep in mind, like, your business best. So keep an open mind, and you don't need to follow the same path that everyone else follows. Different traffic sources can produce variation in customer quality. This is super, super important. As you start, you're going to just, let's try some things. But as you get further along, you want to be able to look back at those, what we call cohorts of customers. It is essentially groupings of customers as they come every single month. And you want to see this source A, let's just call it Meta. Meta produces this type of customer quality. They buy this many times per year. They're worth this much money overall per year, things like that, and compare it to other partners. So you can kind of see what is really worth your investment later on and what's not. So that's worth thinking about. And then super important as well is don't forget to continue growing your owned and your earned channels as you start to pay more attention to the paid side. Your optimal mix at scale includes a combination of all of them. So that's worth thinking about. Next, we're going to go into two channels and specifically two platforms, paid search and paid social. First, we're going to talk about Google Ads, which is probably the most common paid search platform. To start out with this channel, you really need to do a lot of keyword research. There's a lot of tools out there. They're amazing. SEM, Rush, Moz, Google Keyword Planner, Ubersuggest, and Ahrefs are common ones. They all have either some form of free trial or cheap kind of offering, and Google Keyword Planner is always free. SEM is search engine marketing. It's the paid side of search. Within that, I always like to recommend doing two types of campaigns, one, a branded search campaign, and two, a non-branded search campaign. And so how that works is branded search is people that are searching for your branded keywords. So if you are Halo Collar, you're looking for Halo Collar as the branded term. For example, you want to make sure that people can find you. When you turn on ads and you start doing partnerships, you get your name out there, maybe do some press, you'll see that people will Google your name, and you want to make sure that they can find you fast. So if you open up Google and you type in your brand name and you don't show up in the first page or the first couple of options on that screen, you want to make sure you're investing in branded search. At some point, when you do a lot of organic search work or you start to build out your brand enough that you start to show up organically in those top three slots on the screen, then you may consider turning off branded search or maybe turning it down. But in the beginning, it's good to kind of have it. Non-branded search is where you're going to have most of your scale within the traditional search side. So what I've did on the right here on the top is I showed you example or sample SEM campaign structure. And when you think about is you'll want to break out multiple ad groups by theme. So again, doing your keyword research, you're doing, you have a home decor or home goods type of brand. You'll have a ad set that's called pillows, and your ads within that ad set will be related to pillows, and the landing page that you're driving to will be about pillows. And if you have rugs as another category, you'll have two ads about rugs that will go to a rugs landing page, and so on and so forth. I really like to start with what they call phrase match and long tail keywords because they have a stronger intent and they have less competition. They do tend to have lower volume, so it's not like you're going to turn it on tomorrow and then all of a sudden you're spending all your money. You have to play with it a little bit, but it's more relevant. So think a longer phrase or a more intentional search. Let's say you sell dog food, maybe your in quotes phrase match or long tail keyword phrase is organic dog food for senior dogs versus just bidding on dog food, which has a lot of volume, a lot of competition. You can spend all your money. But if you offer, let's say, a specific dog food product that helps dogs with bad joints, this could be a search term for you. I like to start with maximize conversions with target CPA bidding structure, and you definitely would want to test different things. I would say that some brands do find success with the ROAS types of bidding structures, but I typically don't like to start with that because there are no conversions in the system to be able to provide that ROAS, the value-based information. So I like to start with maximize conversions as a starting point. Definitely test and see what works best for you. There's a new type of campaign that is called Performance Max. It's been rolled out over the last year with Google. And whereas traditional search is really all about intent, people searching for a solution, Performance Max expands that to also include discovery. So it combines all of the different things, SEM, shopping, display, YouTube, etc. And so for this, you want to be able to plug in as much as possible to allow for Google to use its algorithm to go find you all of the amazing customers. It's important to note here, you don't have a lot of control and you don't have a lot of visibility. So there is a trust factor here. And that's why I like to still run some traditional search in addition to Performance Max. And if you're a e-commerce D2C brand, you always want to have shopping on, and shopping is now a part of Performance Max. And within Performance Max shopping, you also want to make sure that you're using your Google Merchant account to set up your feeds. If you use Shopify, it's super easy, just one-click integration that plugs it all in there. But that's critical to making sure you have that component of Performance Max working for you. Your SEM stuff will come from all the keyword research that we've just talked about. And then there are lots of different slots to add in additional assets, like videos that can come from YouTube links, photos, etc. You just want to pay attention to all the different formats and specs, so that it's not like cutting off things and kind of looks different. It looks funny from that sense. A simple PMax campaign structure that I like to use is I like to build campaigns based on product categories and product collections. So let's say that you are a apparel company. You offer men's shoes, you want to have an asset group, products and keywords, and landing page all around boots. And then you have a separate asset group all about sneakers, and you'll so on and so forth. And the reason why is because with PMax, Google is automatically going to go beyond whatever targeting that you're putting in place to find your customer. So you want to be able to focus all the assets and the copy and the keywords and everything, all of the genius into one category, just to make sure Google's not going out to the entire world. So you're just focusing it a little bit to figure out what works best. Within Meta, which is probably the most common paid social tool, I like to kind of follow this structure. On the left here, you'll see my first campaign. I like to have two different ad sets. One ad set, it's ads I'm testing, and another ad set, an evergreen ad set. Within the testing ad set, I like to try, what types of ads that I think might work. And then as they become winning ads, then I put them into the evergreen ad campaign. So the evergreen campaign is always running winning ad against winning ad. I'll explain why that's important in a second. So in the beginning, just try to keep things simple. Don't try to do too much. You don't want to go and test 17 different audiences. You don't have the budget for that. You want to put prospecting and retargeting audiences together in the very beginning, because your retargeting audience is not big enough. So, and a retargeting audience is specifically, let's say, a pool of people that are visiting your website, a pool of people who may be abandoning cart on your website, a pool of people that could be watching videos on your channel, things like that. And so you want to put them together. It just helps the pixel learn faster because it's brand new and it doesn't have much information. You will break those out later. And you will want to go into your audience tool within Meta and build out all of these audiences as well, so they can start to pull people in and you can see when they're available to be used in the campaigns. I like to start with lowest cost bidding. It allows for more volume to come through so you can get learnings faster. If you see that the budget is running wild, then you might want to consider making the audience smaller or consider adding bid or cost caps to control that spend. And then with the ad sets, again, like just kind of a common thing to think about is Meta's algorithm is unique in that it will automatically put static photos in front of people who engage with static photos and like to click on them. It will put video in front of people who like to engage with video. So when you're first testing out, you want to test the same format against each other, photo against photo or video against video. Once you have a winner and you put it into the evergreen winning ad set, then you want to have a combination of ad formats for that exact reason. So you want to give Meta the opportunity to put the video in front of people who like video and the photo in front of people like photo. You're going to want to invest most of your money into this evergreen ad set, and you'll essentially grow that out of what we call the learning phase. And the learning phase is something that Meta introduced a while back, and you just want to, we'll go into it a little bit more detail later, but you just want to be able to get out of learning as fast as possible and stay out of learning. Small changes to that campaign, really important. Less than 20% daily budget increases. You don't want to change the bidding structures in your evergreen campaign. You just want to add new ads and you want to just slowly incrementally add that budget. But that's where you're going to have your scale. And you'll go from there. Your metrics are super important. You want to know all the metrics that matter. If you don't know what some of these are, I'd spend some time getting to know them. I also have a much deeper terminology in the appendix as well, but you've probably heard CAC before, or CPA. CAC is the customer acquisition cost. CPA is cost per action. It's the cost of acquiring a new customer. ROAS is a value-based term. It's the return on ad spend. So how much money you're putting in, how much money you're getting out. You want to really try to target at least a 2x in ROAS as you go along. So for every dollar you're spending, you're getting $2 back. And that ROAS can go all the way up to probably 8. I haven't really seen much beyond that, to be honest. Conversion rate, this is the number, the percentage of sessions who convert to customers. Conversion rate is super important. Your AOV is your average order value. That's the amount of the cart size. So it's that essentially all the products together, what is the value of that in dollars? And some of these other terms here are really critical for kind of later stage as you go along. You want to make sure that you know your historical benchmarks. So you don't want to go in blind. How does your sales funnel perform today? In that example earlier, the user journey where you have the ad to the landing page, you want to be able to map each of those steps and calculate average rate. So think about, we call it the intra-funnel rate. Think about like the whole funnel. Intra-funnel is all the steps in between. So you want to look at things like how many people are submitting their email address, how many people are going to the PDPs, how many people are adding to cart, initiating checkout, purchasing, what are the abandonment kind of components as well. And if you don't have data yet, that's okay. Don't freak out. You can use industry benchmarks as a proxy until you start generating your own historical benchmarks, and know that your historical benchmarks will change over time. I like to look at this over at least a period of 30 days. Better yet is like over a period of maybe 3 months so that you can get a true average and you have enough sample coming in. Now we get into the fun part, which is math. There are a bunch of editable calculators, which I've put together for you. If you scan the QR code on your top right, this will also be available to you later on. So don't worry if you can't get your phone out fast enough. But when you think about budget planning and forecasting, what you really want to be thinking about is, what do you need this ad program to produce for you? In this example below, I'm looking to generate 30,000 in revenue. And to do that, I need 375 customers paying $80 on average for my AOV. I also want to consider, what type of CAC goal that I really need to make this worthwhile for me. So in this case, I'm using a CAC of $30. You can kind of guesstimate what this is in a couple different ways as well, but you want to at least come to a starting point of like, what would be a successful CAC for you? In this case, this CAC would produce a 2.7x ROAS. So for every dollar spent, I get $2.70 back, which is a good starting ROAS, actually a great starting ROAS in that sense. Don't be afraid if your ROAS day one is negative or 1, you will optimize and get better at it. So don't freak out if you're not at this point yet, but you do want to aim between a 2 and a 4x ROAS as kind of like your ideal target there. So you want to back into your spend based on the assumption. So in this kind of example below, we're allocating all of our money in this partner. We are hoping to generate at least 375 customers at a $30 CAC. So it will take me about $11,500 to generate that. And so we're technically generating 383 customers for a whopping total of $30,666 in top line or gross revenue. This is just a sample. This is assuming that you're actually hitting this target and that your funnel is operating really well. Keep in mind too, you're sending new traffic to this page that has not been proven. So generally speaking, be conservative with your calculations. Expect for you not to hit them. So don't put a ton of pressure on yourself if you're not getting these numbers right off the bat, but it's good to kind of plan and to kind of estimate and forecast what you think could be possible or what you might need. We'll talk about Google Ads and Meta next. So Google Ads, same deal with the idea of researching your keywords. Every keyword has a cost and you're going to pay on a cost per click, or they call CPC. So you're going to be able to use these different tools I talked about before to identify what long tail keywords or shorter keywords that you might think you'd like to vie for. And you want to look at what their average CPCs are. You want to look at how much volume, so how many searches are happening per month. You want to look at their competitive nature and things like that. Just to kind of give you an idea of like what might be possible. And you can back into what it might cost holistically to drive this traffic by kind of doing like some funnel steps. And so those are all in the calculator as well. And I know this can be a lot to even think about, like, where would I start? How does this even work? in this most simple format, like to just start with, let's say, $500 on search and then see where we go from there. It takes a while, I find, to get from 500 to even 2,000, and then you start to figure some things out and you're able to scale a lot faster. For Meta, I like to use a simple example of a pizza party. When you're throwing a party and you're ordering pizza, the last thing you want is for people to go home hungry. So you'll want to make sure there's enough budget or enough pizza for everybody at the party. So when you're thinking about investing or building out your, everything for Meta, you want to look at that learning phase we talked about. So this is not that testing campaign. This is the evergreen campaign, right? So you need to know that within the learning phase on Meta, you need at least 50 actions per week per ad set. So if your action is defined as a purchase, you need at least 50 purchases per week per ad set to exit learning. So you can mathematically get to that. I showed you an example on the right using the same kind of CAC target here. And in this case, you need about $18,000 to exit learning for that one ad set. So this approach is not critical. It's not what you need to get started. Facebook's not going to say, like, you can't run this campaign because you're still in learning. The important thing here is for you to know that the learning phase on Facebook is Facebook's still trying to figure it out too. So you may not have a fully optimized campaign on their side. It may be a little more expensive for you to reach your customers, things like that. So you do want to get out of it, but don't freak out if you're spending a little bit of time in learning here and there as you go along. There are lots of optimization levers that you can pull and things you can test around, which is super exciting. Don't feel overwhelmed. This should be a good thing that you have a lot of options at your fingertips. If you have a chance to work with a rep at any of these platforms, take that opportunity to spend some time with them. They will always tell you what the platform wants to tell you, which is not always what works for you. So just keep that in mind, but there are great resources. They can help teach you the platforms. I learned very early on how to do a lot of this by just having great relationships with our reps. Talk to your peers. If you're in founder groups, a lot of times you're like, they'll know, like, I ran into that too. Here's how I approached it, things like that. Don't have an ego about it. Just ask. There's a lot of fantastic people in our networks that are willing to help you as you go along. You can test around audience and different types of segments you can create using the audience tools, or you can use using your email service. You also can test around different messaging or creative formats. You can try different bid strategies. You can try different campaign types. You can try different platforms or partners. But all in all, you're always going to be testing. Throughout the entire journey of you as a founder and you running your company, you will always be testing. You'll always be able to learn something new, unlock a new opportunity. And you want to make sure that you're testing with intention. I always like to set what I call a testing agenda. It's specific experiments that I think that I would like to run to improve a specific metric. So you don't want to have like a bajillion metrics. You just have one core metric and you're going to build an entire testing agenda around how to impact that one metric. You'll determine the time of the test, what it might look like, how you might measure it. And you want to run one test at a time. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get the sample size at lower budgets. So keep that in mind. And you're going to always want to do it outside of those evergreen campaigns because you don't want to start. You don't want to stop your momentum there. You want to continue to build that slowly over time and then test in this other area. So you'll just separate some money for testing and then you'll have your money for incremental scale. You're going to iterate and you're going to also focus on that each test is hopefully going to give you incremental gains. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's worse, and that's okay. It's all part of learning. You just learn and you'll adjust. I won't go through all the tests here on the right, but there are some sample tests you can play around with. How to know if it's working or not working. So again, you're going to think about which one metric are you optimizing for? What is a benchmark or baseline? What's normal for that? If you're using the $30 CAC example, if the benchmark is $30 and you're now spending $60, well, that's worse, right? So is it better, worse, or the same? If you're not sure, you might want to let the test run longer, or you might want to increase your spend to generate a larger sample size. After you've established that it's better or worse or the same, you don't want to stop there. Take a minute, zoom out at your whole business, look at different types of interrelated metrics. If you're driving for purchase, revenue, AOV, conversion rate, time on site, value of the customer, kind of just overall, like, my gut, is it telling me it's working? Is it not working? Is it impacting other things of the business? Just stay focused, but come back out and come back in. You'll want to review the results of this test against your testing agenda. So just going back to it, did this test confirm or negate my hypothesis? Should I change what's on the testing agenda? Should I adjust it based on what I know now? And, kind of get back out there and test some more. Some additional measurement tips. You want to choose and configure your primary analytics tool. Google Analytics is the most common option for B2C. It's free. You want to also know that Google Analytics, which was formerly known as UA3 or Universal Analytics 3, is now GA4 or Google Analytics 4. It's really important. It's a brand new thing. It's been 27 days since they turned off UA3. And if you have not made this shift, you really need to do it right now before you lose access to your data in the UA3 platform. There's plenty of other tools out there if you don't want to use GA, and that's okay too. If the tool that you're using will recognize what they call UTMs. This is when you go to Google, you search for your favorite product that's out there, and you see that the URL is 1 million string letters long. This is anything after the question mark in that string of letters in the URL is considered a UTM. You can use this really handy dandy UTM builder. I still do, just to create UTMs that you can essentially tell your tracking tool what the source or what the medium or other particular parameters are that can help you track the performance of different campaigns, ad sets, ads, etc. You want to set up and season your ad pixels. I wish that ad pixels could just magically see all of the historical data, but they don't. So they start tracking it the moment that you place them on your site. The sooner you can place them, even if you're not interested in starting to invest today, is good because it can just learn in the background, which is great. Google Ad links directly to Google Analytics. But even there and on Meta, you still might have to configure custom events. So you'll sometimes need a developer to help you with that. In some cases, for instance, like Shopify is probably the easiest to actually just imports a lot of that stuff that you need, which is really nice. And just be patient on this one. You also want to be able to spot check your analytics tools and make sure that they're tracking correctly. If there is a gap in, let's say your Shopify is saying one thing and your Google Analytics is saying another thing, understand why that may be a discrepancy, understand if it's just always a 10% variance, know that, and that's okay too. So when you're going out and trying different traffic sources and things like that, it shouldn't continue to spread. It should be consistent. Also know that after, Apple rolled out iOS 14.5, then there also is a lot of signal loss. And as more companies are changing their perspective on cookie or cookieless future, some of this will shift. So just understand what you're looking at, know why something may be different or not. You also want to define your approach to attribution. Attribution is a fancy word to say like who gets the credit. And once you define that approach, you want to stick to it so that your reporting and everything in the way that you approach your planning, the way you approach your forecasting and allocations are all the same. You'll define your benchmarks as a part of this approach too. You want to set up those ad platform reports, run them regularly. You can set it to auto send to your email, which is great. So you don't have to go back in and play with it. And you just want to understand the nuances of each platform and delays in reporting. Sometimes they have different ad window reporting things and such like that. So you just want to pay attention to it when you're setting it up. Try to keep things as consistent as possible. And then don't rely solely on the tools. Remember, like a customer and audience is king. So continue to have that conversation open all the time. That they're the most important people here in all of this. So let's say you're ready to scale. There is no one size fits all approach. One really, really important thing here is you do not want to start diversifying and testing into additional channels until you've truly maxed out the first channels that you're going in. So if you decide to just go paid social, maybe paid social, paid search, things like that, stick to those and try to get them to scale as much as possible, and then consider investing in a third channel. At scale, you may consider some different partner mixes. I've included a couple here below that you can kind of play around with over time, but I'd say some of the 4 big areas: paid search, paid social, marketplaces, and affiliate or sponsored endorsements of different types. You want to think about who can help you, because this is a lot. You fit a ton into the last 45 minutes or so, but your time is finite. As a founder, there are a lot of things that you need to do, and you don't want to be bogged down too much by all of this when you can just hire or find a friend or hire, find somebody who can help you get through this sometimes complicated type of process. So they can help you simplify all of it. You want to be thinking through either a combination of these different things in one person in the beginning, and then kind of break out as you have more budget to hire separate dedicated people within each of these areas. You're going to want to have a strategic lead. This is like a head of growth or head of performance who's going to help be this mastermind behind how much money should we spend, what platform should we be investing in, pretty much all the stuff that we talked about in today's presentation. You also want to have channel managers. In the beginning, you can sometimes get away with one channel manager doing a lot of things, but as you start to scale and you get more money invested in each of these channels, you want to have dedicated channel managers, one for paid search, one for paid social, one for affiliate, one for any of the particular channels that you're going into. Creative support, you will want to be able to tap in a graphic designer, video editor, or some external partner. You can definitely get away with Canva for a very long time, but you do want to be able to pull in folks who can keep things on brand and keep, just tap into the creative juices. It really makes a big difference. And then other marketing support. And just because we're investing in ads does not mean that having a fantastic lifecycle or email person or a really engaging organic social person or other types of influencer partnerships or things all can't play into this whole thing being more successful for you. Different types of support can also come into play at various stages of your business, whether you're hiring your first full-time employee, whether you're bringing in consultants or fractional support, or you're hiring an agency. And there's no right or wrong way. You have to kind of decide what's best for you, and these needs can change over time. Right Setup can help. We're marketers and residents. We have an entire team of project strategists. We're all former in-house marketers with different types of marketing experience, and we power a collective of marketing experts. We have thousands of really incredible people that honestly, I'm honored to work with and learn from every single day. Anything from managers all the way up through CMO level folks. And, we can deploy them on your business as needed. And so we're actually offering something really special for brands today. And so if you are spending some time with me today, or you happen to hear this on recording, or your friend sends this to you because they know that you need it with all the love in the world, we're willing to give out 30 minutes of free marketing advice with any one of our Right Setup project strategists. So if you'd like to take advantage of this, just email me. My email's below. It'll also be on the title slide at the end. And so we're happy to spend some time with you, no strings attached. And if we can help you out, we totally will. But if not, you'll leave with some valuable information. We've helped more than 1,000 brands since we started about 5 years ago, and we've grown almost exclusively through word of mouth and referral. And so we thank you so much if you've ever referred business to us or referred other talent to our platform. We're really appreciative of it. A few last words of wisdom, because I know that was a lot. You can do a lot of things, but you can't do them all very well. So focus on a few that you can thoughtfully move forward, punt the rest for later. Stay agile. Change is a constant. I know that you want to find a balance, but it just doesn't exist in startup land. So just expect that change, be comfortable in the hustle. What worked day one may not work day 365. So just keep an open mind there. You want to test, you want to learn, you want to iterate, and you want to continue to take constant cues from your customers. Do not cut off that stream of consciousness with them. It's really important. If something isn't working, don't force it. Just take a second, rework your plan, and then reapproach it. You're moving at breakneck speed every single day. It is so easy to blink and you've lost 2 years of time. So just set a calendar invite for some intentional reflection points where you can just stop, reprioritize, take a second, make sure that you can shift where your ship is going, keep it on the right course. And I know you want to do everything yourself and you have limited time and resources, but you can, if you're open to it, bringing in the right type of people, whether it's a consultant, an FTE, a partner, a friend, whether it's through us or another service, or you just find them on LinkedIn, the right people can really save you time and reduce waste. It's critical when you have limited runway. So don't wait too long to hire the right people. That said, don't just hire anyone off the street. Make sure that you check their references and they're good people, because the wrong people can also be challenging. So That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for the time. I'd love to hear your questions. I also know there are a ton of consultants in the audience today. So if you have tips for our early stage companies, please do share them, and we'll open up the chat now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa. So much good information. And we've already gotten a ton of great questions. So like we said earlier, we'll get through as many as we can. I'll put on my New York speed talking so we can read them out. All right. First up, some ads experts say it's best to avoid you and your in ad copy for Meta, and that the algorithm doesn't like it because it's too personalized. Have you run into any issues with that in the past, especially for products that address, maybe more sensitive areas like weight control, anti-aging, menopause, et cetera?
Really great question. And the answer is yes and no. I've seen it just depends on the category and what is getting caught in the filter or the algorithms over time. There is a slide I have put into the appendix that specifically speaks to the no words of Meta. So you can check that out later, but that's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Awesome. Moving right along. What do you mean by activation offer on slide 9? That was for landing pages. Is that just a product featured in the ad, or is it a discount? Just clarification there.
Great question. Activation offer can just be a traditional offer, like what you're offering in the ad. If you're giving them 10% off their first purchase, you're going to make sure the 10% off their first purchase is on the landing page that you're driving the traffic to.
Awesome. Thank you. And this one's regarding, I believe it was paid search. Michael wants to know where smart campaigns fall within the structure you laid out.
Really good question. So I would say Google Ads is the most evolving space at the moment. And I feel like every time I log in, there's something different. So smart campaigns definitely were a core part of the strategy that I used to run for many years. And I liked running traditional, let's say, shopping campaigns against smart shopping campaigns just to see how, one performs versus another. In the new system, I've noticed that there is a less kind of smart options are being pulled into Performance Max. So it's considered like the new smart one. But I'd say there's a ton to read up on in the Google space between the GA4 migrations, the Performance Max rollout, some of the ad types and ad campaign types that are getting sunset. So that's definitely a space. If you don't have a lot of time to read up on it, I hire a Google Ads expert to support you.
Good advice. I know there's a lot changing in the paid search side of things right now. And we actually have a few other questions. So let's stick on the topic. Elliot wants to know, do you usually only use phrase match, or do you ever work with broad match and exact match?
Great question. So I like to focus today because it's all about the early stage companies and where you might start, but definitely there is a play to use all three: the exact match, the phrase match, and the broad match. I like to think broad match is if you're going fishing, you're going to go and just see where there might be some volume to unlock. It also can pull in potential other phrases you may not be thinking about, or you may not see within your Google or your keyword research. So it's worth testing them. The call out here is that if you have a ton of broad match keywords, it can spend really, really fast. So your entire budget can go to just one broad keyword, and then you're out of budget for the month and you didn't get a lot of learnings. So I tend to say there's a role with them, but I wouldn't necessarily start with them in day one. I would work on adding them in as you need to sprinkle in more volume or test different things, but you want to be very mindful of what you're bidding and how much budget you're putting towards those. Break them out into separate campaigns, just because you can spend very quickly.
Awesome. Cool. Moving right along. Regarding Google PMax campaigns with the feed, do you recommend including assets for ads to run on the display, YouTube, and other networks when launching a brand new campaign?
In the beginning, yes, I let it run and try, different placements. And brand safety is always a thing, but I would say that unless you're managing budgets for very large brands that have departments around brand safety and all that, I would say that just letting the algorithm decide where it fits and where it doesn't is probably a good starting point for the smaller brands. But that said, you just want to make sure you're paying attention, to where placements are actually happening and try to pull reporting and see that. And if you start to see things like audience networks, specifically on Facebook or Meta, or sometimes display networks or audience partners that like check the box to get the extra stuff. You just want to be mindful of that, and that sometimes it's lower quality, sometimes they're not the best placement, so you may want to turn them off. But in the beginning, I try to just keep them on and not try to limit the algorithm too much, because there's not a ton of learnings on those pixels just yet. So wherever they can get the learnings, I'm okay with it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Switching gears a bit to get over into Meta land. Let me scroll and find the question that came in there. Yes. So Danny wants to know if you can speak a little bit to how to actually set up meta ad experiments. Do you recommend setting it up as a separate ad set with an ad set budget, using the A/B testing tool, running them all against each other within the same campaign budget, et cetera?
I'm kind of old school. I like to set up the tests on my own and kind of design the experiments within the tool, but you can use the A/B testing tool. There's nothing really wrong with it. It will run, run its course. Once you set it up, you can't change it. So you have to let the budget run through and it will decide who the winner is. You can most certainly do that. I like the flexibility that setting it up manually it does for me. And what I mean by manually is I'll set up an ad set and then I'll run the ads against it. If I'm running ad sets against each other, then I'll keep the ads the same and then I'll just change the ad set. So it depends on which one constant that you're looking to test. You're going to keep everything else the same, so you get a good read when you're doing the manual test. It's a good question.
Cool. And then I believe this was also related to Meta, but Dana, let me know if it wasn't. How many ads do you typically test against each other at one time during testing the ad set? It looks like you recommended just two, but that she feels low in terms of moving quickly and getting clarity on what ads are best.
Definitely. So I like to, for the purposes of this today's conversation, I kept it to two specifically because a lot of the early stage brands don't have a lot of budget. So the pizza party example, if they put 5, 10, as many different types of ads in there, they're not going to have enough budget to get to a sample size in any one ad. So I'd say a minimum of 2, but usually I'm testing somewhere between 3 and 5 ads at a single point in time, and then kind of swapping those out as I start to deem them ineffective or effective and moving them to the evergreen campaign. It's a good question.
Cool. We got some questions about A/B testing. So when you're doing A/B testing, are you spending your full weekly budget or just part of the budget?
So I like to, it kind of depends on like what holistic budget you're working with, but I traditionally like to pull aside 10% of my budget for innovation or testing. And in the beginning, that share of spend is higher until you have an evergreen campaign running. But once you have evergreen running, you just kind of pull a percentage of that spend to start putting towards testing. Within Meta specifically, I like to have at least $200 run through per ad before I say like, yes, okay, like I have enough sample to really say yay or nay on this, and that's minimum. So you kind of just do the math and see if you think you have enough to get to a place of learning for that.
Awesome, cool. And we have a few more questions on Facebook, but I want to switch gears a little bit. One person wants to know if it's easy to create great ads yourself or if you should engage a creative.
You can most certainly use templates that are on Canva for free. There are a lot of great samples there. You can also use Facebook's ad library, look up your competitors, see what types of ads that they have. And in the appendix of this presentation, I didn't go into it, but I mean, I basically have like a ton of examples, things you can do to your website, different ad concepts and examples here that you can run through and look at as examples. But Canva, you can definitely do a lot of that stuff for free. And then, if you need other people to come in and just make it slightly better, you can hire a graphic designer, a video editor pretty cheap to just, do the final post-production edits. So I'd say yes, until you have budget to hire someone, absolutely do the best you can. But if you have some budget, then I'd put that aside for a graphic designer who can also do video editing in the beginning, and later on you want to separate that because they're two core skill sets. So, they're almost like different people that you hire at different points in time. But short answer is yes, until you can totally use free tools like Canva to help you.
Cool. And then we have a question about attribution. So what's your recommendation on how early stage companies should approach or begin thinking about attribution in general, especially in this ever evolving climate of user data and privacy regulations?
Oh, that's a good question. And actually, my colleague Ryan and a few other really incredible consultants did an entire webinar on attribution, which I totally recommend that you get a hold of and watch, because they're way more equipped to answer this question than I am. But I would probably say this is, once you choose your core or your primary analytics platform, then that platform typically has like a standard attribution process, like Google Analytics, or U830 at least was last click attribution. So you kind of use that across everything. But you just, once you kind of decide on what it is, and there's different options out there, then you just want to make sure that it stays consistent as you continue going back to that same analytics tool to map back to. So you have a constant. What you don't want to do is compare different platforms against each other, because they don't necessarily add up. Like if you took your meta reporting and then compared it to Google Analytics, and it's not going to match necessarily. So you always want to say, all right, my one true source is, say, Google Analytics, and I can see my meta traffic, I can see my Google traffic, I can see my other channel traffic. And I know that, like, compared to last month on this same tool, this is how it's working. And then I'd say the other thing kind of worth mentioning there too is each of the view through windows are different, standard out of the box for each of the ad platforms, and you want to try to line them up as close as possible, so that when you do try to look at platform compared to your core analytics tool, that there's at least the same variance consistently. So hopefully that answered your question, but I would defer to our attribution experts for this.
Yeah, and we you can find a recap on our blog if you just search for attribution. It's one of the articles there, and I can also remember to include a link to the webinar for you to check out on demand when you have a sec. Good call out, Lissa. So we do have a bunch more questions. I don't know, Lissa, do you have a hard stop?
No, let's go. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. And I know a lot of the question askers are still here, probably eagerly awaiting. So Michael wants to know if you have a benchmark conversion rate multiple that you consider for brand search, paid social, et cetera. Like, for example, brand search conversion rate should be 3x the site average conversion rate.
That's a really good question. Yes and no. So in specific use cases where it's you know the client and the category, you may have it. Generally across the board, I try to avoid giving exact numbers. What I will say is, like, overall conversion rate, anything below 1% overall site conversion rate, not great. You definitely want to improve that. Anything from 1 to 3% is a good start, and you want to try to get it as close to 30 as fast as possible. Anything 3 to 5 is considered a good conversion rate, and anything above 5 is considered a great conversion rate. So hopefully it gives you a general guidance on it. I'll always say organic traffic is going to be higher than your paid traffic. And so you can also use that a little bit as a directional benchmark. Like your email or your people who have already been to the site before, that will always pop a little bit higher. So kind of just know the source of the traffic and be able to kind of, kind of estimate out from there. Going as deep into, let's say, like branded versus non-branded, you might just want to determine your own benchmarks for each of those. Though you have a point in that branded traffic will always convert a significantly higher amount than your non-branded, because people are searching for you. And so they already know about you somewhere. So it's probably not the first touch. It's probably the second or third or the fourth touch.
Awesome. And then Jonathan is asking, regarding your evergreen campaign approach, do you keep everything in that campaign for testing in regards to interest targeting, lookalikes, retargeting, et cetera? And then if you do, when something works, why can't you just shut off the ad groups that don't work instead of moving it to an entire new campaign?
So it's a good question. This is just one approach, right? There's lots of different approaches in doing it. And this focus is really around starting out, when to keep it very simple. When you start having enough sample against your audiences where you can actually build lookalike audiences and things like that, then I've even done, let's say, lookalike audiences as a core testing group. You can do the same with interest-based. So just because an ad works in one particular ad set does not necessarily mean it's always going to work, right? You want to test against those different audiences. So it's a good question. And the answer is it depends, right? When you have enough budget where you're separating prospecting and retargeting. I actually like to do top funnel, mid funnel, and lower funnels, like 3 separate groups of campaigns within the evergreen set, and really target my messaging around where they are in the funnel. So if they're like the top funnel one is all about engaging for the first time. So maybe there might be different types of assets in that particular group. Mid funnel is that they've seen me before. So it's, people who have come to the site, people who have watched video, something like that, but they maybe haven't added a cart. And like bottom funnel, people who have like truly like been on the site, they've added a cart, they've abandoned, they haven't purchased. So kind of like playing with kind of stages of the funnel and messaging within those is kind of my next step that I usually go to after I keep things pretty simple in that sense. You can just turn off the ad set if you have testing within, if that's the approach that you take, that's totally fine. You could just turn off the ads that don't work, keep the ads that do work. That's totally fine to do it that way if that's how you like to do it. What I would just caution against is if you make too many changes to that single ad set where you're constantly going back into the learning phase, that's what you want to avoid.
Cool. Thank you. Michelle wants to know how important it is to set up the Facebook conversion API versus just the tracking pixel.
It's a great question. If I was a developer, I'd be able to tell you. What I would say is a conversion API is recommended when you can do it, because the server to server connection makes it so that the events are more closely aligned and there's less discrepancy between the data sources.
Great, thank you. And we're getting to the end here. We'll do maybe 2 more. Just skimming this one again. So there are some products that can be harder to find audiences for on Meta. For example, a specific supplement that might not exist as an interest, or if you try to broad interest like vitamins, it still doesn't really work. What would your approach be to solving a problem like this? Is it broad targeting with no interest selected, or any other advice to share there?
Great question. I'm glad this got brought up. Is that, Meta a couple of years back, you could target anything under the sun, and Meta these days, every time you log in, there's less and less targeting options available. The general rule of thumb today is that you will include a broad audience and you'll use targeting or use creative as your targeting. So instead of like the other way, the old fashioned way is you're setting up your audience and then you're using your audience to determine, which creative would be the best. You're flipping on its head. You're saying like, hey, Meta, go and find this person. Here's what I want them to be engaging with. And so you're set up a broad audience campaign. In those cases, I like to put some sort of budget cap in play, because some similar deal with like a broad match keyword on Google is broad audience targeting on Meta. You can spend a lot of money really fast, but I have seen in some cases that broad targeting can outperform like more traditional audience targeting. And in that case, then you want to think about what are the different types of creative that could be compelling. What are the messages there that if they engage with this, then it would identify that person as the core customer at the end of the day. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. It's essentially using your creative as your targeting broad audience in the platform. I traditionally would do that, especially if like a supplement interest is not working for you. And then one thing on that too is you could consider lookalike modeling. You can take any audience and model against it. So if it's your CRM, you have a bunch of buyers there, you can pop that into Meta and you can have it build a modeled lookalike audience, and you can do modeled lookalike audiences from 1% similarity all the way up to 10% similarity, 1% being closer modeled. So you could play with that too. Just know that match rates aren't the same as they used to be. So you may need to have a larger sample size to put into the system. And when you're building audiences like that, you want to try to have a connection that's constantly going into the platform from like, say, your CRM tool. And you can kind of play around with that. You can also build partnerships with other folks that might have the right audience. They've figured it out, and they can share audiences within Meta with you, which is pretty cool too. So you can play with that as well.
All right, the final question, Lisa, thanks, you're such a champ. I'm not sure if this was a follow-up question to something that we had been talking about, but the question is, and what about dynamic creative testing? This might have been piggybacking on something we were talking about with Meta. I'm not sure though. Any thoughts on dynamic creative testing?
Yes. Okay. So this is another huge area too, and it's more of an advanced one. So I don't know if like the startup companies in the space would necessarily need to go to this step yet, but it is good to bring up and talk about. So within the Google side, responsive search ads, essentially you can put out up to 15 headlines and 4 descriptions, and in PMax you can also add, like, I think it's 15 different asset types or things like that. So you want to try to utilize all of those things and let the Google algorithm take it and auto optimize. On Meta, there is the ability to do dynamic creative, and I have tested it in the past. I find most challenging about it is that the reporting isn't great. It's sometimes very difficult to understand which headline or which copy, which image, which things of that are the ones that are working really well. So I would read up on exactly how to set up that experiment so that you can get the maximum amount of reporting possible. But I have seen in some cases that you can that basically Meta's algorithm with a bunch of different types of assets and descriptions, ad copy and headlines can actually work really well, but it's just tough to know what it was in that dynamic creative set that's driving that performance. So try it, see how it works.
Awesome. Lisa, thank you so much. This truly blows my mind how much information you were able to share in 70 minutes. Very, very insightful. Appreciate your time. Thanks to everyone who was able to join us today. If you haven't had a chance, I dropped a poll a little while ago. We'd just love to get your feedback. We're always looking to improve and hear what's working. So I'd appreciate your thoughts there. Like we mentioned earlier on, we'll be sharing the recording and Lisa's slides in the coming days. She's got so many additional materials in the appendix that are definitely worth perusing once you have a chance. I think that's everything on my side. Lisa, anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, just thank you so much for the time and for all the great questions. And, there's no one size fits all for this. Everybody has a different approach, and, just want to try different things and see what works for you. So happy testing. And again, thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful Thursday. Bye-bye.